So I am going to talk to you about using Mote in a special education classroom. This is going to be a lightning speed presentation because I only have 30 minutes to really share this information with you. I'm really excited. So let's just get going. So I've already talked about, I just had a great introduction about what my session is going to be about, that I'm a special education teacher. I work primarily with high school students. I am in Chicago Public Schools, and you can follow me on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, you name it, Miss Graff's Room. So the agenda for today, there's 3 key topics that I really want to cover. And again, I have to do this in a really fast-paced agenda. So there's so many more things that we can explore with these topics. But I think I'm going to do my best to give you an overview of how I really use Mote in my classroom. So I first want to talk about how I use Mote with my students. I'm going to talk about how I use Mote to collaborate and communicate with colleagues. And then I really want to talk about the importance of using Mote to communicate with families, because no matter, what type of environment you're in, especially in a school environment, we're always going to be interacting with not only the students and our colleagues, but also the families, which are really important. And I always call them the experts too. So using Mote with our students. Whoops, I just went backwards. So I want to talk about Mote with Google Tools. I'm going to talk about using Mote on an LMS system. And then I'm going to talk about Mote as a modification and accommodation. So Mote with Google Tools. Since I'm presenting, and this is actually my first time using Canva as a presentation, which is really awesome, I decided to take screenshots so there weren't any audio technical issues. So 3 ways that I use Mote in my classroom. So one of the things that I always forget to mention every time that I'm presenting is that I actually co-teach with 4 different general education teachers. And this year, I'm actually teaching 4 different contents. So I teach in a kind of a self-contained setting where I'm helping students with IEPs, with executive functioning. I'm teaching Algebra 2. I'm teaching junior level English and senior level English this year. So lots of preps. And I love using Google Mote with Google Tools because my school, we are a Google tool. So one of the ways, or Google School. So one of the ways that I use Mote is actually to provide audio feedback as a Google comment. So if a student, for instance, is working on a Google Doc for their essay, I've tried to take some pictures here. If you go and provide them feedback on that Google Doc with that little plus sign or add a comment, instead of writing just a really long paragraph of text, I actually record my voice and say, hey, Susie, go back to paragraph 2, and I think you have some grammar mistakes. Or how could you explain such and such in a little bit more depth? And what I love about Mote is that the student can listen to this over and over as many times as they want. And sometimes, I'm sure we've all experienced this. I've experienced this myself with emails or just text comments. It's really hard to imagine what the person who created that feedback is thinking. So having Mote as a great tool really helps our students process, especially our students who are, we call them diverse learner students with IEPs and 504s, to really just take in and process that feedback. Another way that I use Mote with Google Tools is providing audio task directions on a Google form. I'm sure a lot of us use Google Forms to check in with our students as how they're feeling. I use this a lot in my self-contained setting, which is called a resource classroom, to check in with students about what assignments they need to do for the day. So I always provide text directions. You can, when you're completing a Google form. So I like to provide audio task directions on a Google form. So I'm giving students those directions, and they're able to really process and understand what I'm asking them to do in the classroom at that moment. And then the third step is I like to provide audio or voice to text feedback on Google Slides. So at the high school level, we do a lot of presenting. I really want students, especially in their IEP meetings, to have a voice. So when they are presenting, I actually have them provide audio feedback so that we can really hear their voice through the slides. And it's great in a team meeting because maybe the student is really shy to share what they're learning in class or what they need to work on. So we can press play on Google Slides and hear their voice, which is awesome. All right, so now I want to talk about Mote with Google Classroom because I think that's really, really important. So one of the ways that I use Mote in Google Classroom is I provide audio announcements. I call them the don't forget abouts. A lot of my students are continuing to work on executive functioning. It's not very easy for them. So rather than just typing up a very long message in the stream, I always provide audio along with that message so students can process about what they need for the week, what they need for class. We're starting school next week, and I just used Mote the other day. I couldn't take a screenshot of it, but I used Mote to remind students, hey, school starts Monday, and don't forget to come to first period, which is our advisory, and check the topic. I have a topic in my advisory Google Classroom about the new bell schedule. So we have a new bell schedule, and I've already seen students start to engage with that Mote in Google Classroom, which is awesome. I also, like I mentioned in the slide before, I provide audio feedback on assignments, especially in that private comment section, right? I'm sure maybe a lot of us have experienced feedback on different things, or maybe we have taken, I just finished a endorsement in English as a second language. My teacher would often provide me just text feedback, and I had no idea why I got that grade on that specific assignment. With using Mote in that private comment section, I can easily process and understand, okay, what was my teacher trying to tell me and why I got that grade? Same with my students. They really appreciate that I go in detail in the private comment section on Google Classroom, like, hey, this is why I gave you this score or this rating, and here's what you can do to make corrections. My favorite part of using Mote with Google Classroom is actually creating audio questions of the day. I call them the QODs in my classroom, and students can go on the screen, and rather than typing their response in the comments, they can answer my question with audio communication, which is awesome. So lots of things that you can do with Mote. All right, so Mote for modifications, which are really important. I've talked a lot about how I use Mote with Google Tools. I want to talk about also how we use Mote for modifications, okay? So the first thing that I do when I have an assessment, I love to provide audio recordings using Mote to read aloud a story or a test to a student. I'm not only a special education teacher, but a fun fact about me, and I've mentioned this, I think, to a lot of the Mote team, or just if you get the chance to meet me in person, I do have a background as a singer. And I'm sure, you know, even if you're not a singer, as a teacher, as a special education teacher, my voice really gets tired throughout the day. And when I have to read a lot of tests, my voice is just going to get really, really tired. So I often use Mote to record myself reading a story or reading multiple choice questions. So that way I can conserve my voice throughout the day, and I can use my voice when I need to. Also, I love having students, again, use audio to share mastery of the content. So if we're giving an assessment in English class, right? And maybe the student has really trouble expressing their thoughts through handwriting or through typing, let's allow our students to record their response using audio. And you can submit that through Mote or through a Mote sticky, which is really fun. And the last thing actually is when we are using our technology, because in my school we are, for the first time ever, we are a one-to-one Chromebook school through the Verizon Learning Initiative. It's called the VILS, very long name. All students and staff in the school that I work at actually get access to a Chromebook for the entire year. So teachers love to use websites. And I love having students use the sticky mode as an annotation to a website or story they're reading. Maybe the student has to write a paper and they have to use evidence from different sources. Let's have our students utilize Mote and make a recording or annotation so they remember later on when they're going to write that paper, oh, this is what I was thinking when I was exploring this website, or this is how I want to use that piece of evidence from such website to integrate that into my essay. So lots of ways that we can utilize Mote for modifications and accommodations. Now, all right, I talked about the student aspect. I also want to talk about how I use Mote with colleagues, which is very, very important. So the key things that I'm going to touch on are collaboration and communication with Mote. So Mote for collaboration. One of the ways that I use Mote for collaboration is, like I said, I work with 4 different teachers this year, which is a lot. It's a lot as a special education teacher. And we have a lot of different documents. A lot of teachers use Google Calendar, or they use Google Docs and create a calendar, or Google Sheets. Mote is amazing because when I'm looking at different lesson plans, I don't really have a lot of time to type out a lot of comments, a lot of feedback. So I love, again, using Mote as an audio way in Google Tools to provide a comment or feedback on a lesson, or telling my co-teacher, hey, I would love to take the lead on these 2 slides in the lesson, which is awesome. Another way that I love using Mote is during those staff meetings. We all have to go to staff meetings or professional learning. Maybe a colleague of mine can't attend a staff meeting, or they can't attend a professional learning. I love to record audio notes during these times and share them with colleagues later on so they can get kind of the gist of what happened in that learning session. What were the highlights of that staff meeting or learning session? All right, so Mote for communication with colleagues is very important as well. When I write emails, again, I really don't have a lot of time jumping from 4 different classes as a special education teacher in 4 different rooms throughout the day. So I love to include an email with an audio recording using Mote, so that way somebody can process my thoughts about, oh, this is what Miss Graff needs, or this is what she was saying. I also, again, I'm in charge of a lot of IEPs with very limited time throughout the day. So I actually create what's called snapshots, which are kind of an overview of the students' learning needs and what they need in each classroom. And I provide audio in different sections of that snapshot. So teachers are like, huh, what does that mean? And they can click on my audio recording with Mote to really understand what support students need in their classroom. All right, and finally, I know I'm going through this really, really fast. I really want to talk about how we can use Mote for family engagement, because remember, as I mentioned before, our families are the experts of their children, and it's really important that we get them involved at the table, whether we're at an IEP meeting or when we're just educating their child in general. So the first way that I use Mote with families is about every couple of months, I like to create what's called a positive postcard. I usually create this on Google Slides. There's many templates out there. You can, if you don't have time to be fancy, you can just, write a little blurb. But in addition to that, I like to use Mote to read that blurb and send that home to the family. Like maybe Susie Q got all of her assignments done on time that week. So I want to send a note home saying, I'm really proud of you, Susie Q, that you turned in all of your assignments on time and you've just been participating more. This really makes a message that's in text come to life with audio. Another way that I also love to use Mote with family engagement is a tool, Wakelet. If you're not familiar with Wakelet, you should be. I call it the Pinterest 2.0 because you can create a Wakelet and it saves audio files such as Mote, PDFs, pretty much you name it. It's like a Pinterest on steroids to me. So in my Wakelet every week, I have something called the Miss Graff's Weekly Word, which is where I inform families of just updates in my classroom, school-wide announcements that I think they should know about. And when I do this in my Wakelet, I always add, again, to the text that I've saved, an audio note just explaining the updates. And families have really given me great feedback about this because it really brings the message to life, especially for our ELL families who may not speak English. It's been really beneficial to have them listen to me talk about the different school-wide events and get excited about what's going on in school. So we're getting close to the end. I'm actually doing very well on time. I think it's 10:47. But one quote that I always end my sessions with is this one by Deborah Ruh, which she is a activist for individuals with disabilities. And she says that accessibility allows us to tap into everyone's potential. When we utilize tools like Mote, we are really bringing content to life. We are really engaging more of our families, more of our colleagues, and getting them excited to support all of our learners, which is so important. And I believe that as a special education teacher, that we cannot just continue to do traditional methods of teaching. We need to utilize tools like Mote to really help our students thrive in no matter what classroom setting they are in, no matter what school setting we are in, and just really make things accessible. When we make things accessible, more students are engaged, our families are engaged, and our colleagues are excited, and we increase collaboration among so many school stakeholders. So I know that was very, very short and condensed and jam-packed, but I hope that everybody has walked away with a new tip on how they can use Mote. Please continue to stay connected. Again, my name is Cheryl Graff. I'm a 9th through 12th grade special education teacher in Chicago Public Schools at Chicago, Illinois. I'm a Mote ambassador. You can find me on pretty much all the socials at Miss Graff's Room. Thank you so much to the Mote team. I am so grateful to be here and present with you all, and have a wonderful rest of your MoteCon and a wonderful rest of your school, or I should say, a wonderful beginning of your school year. Take care, everybody.